Welcome to today's special episode, where we delve into the complexities of global economics, the essence of superpowers, and the intricate dynamics of regional partnerships. Today, we are honored to have Jayant Bandari, a seasoned economist and an astute observer of geopolitical trends, to share his profound insights. Our conversation transverses a wide array of topics, beginning with Jayant's personal experiences across various countries, highlighting the cultural and operational diversities he has encountered. Giant offers a candid view on the societal chaos and similarities between India and Pakistan, shedding light on the deep rooted cultural exchanges and misconceptions prevailing in subcontinent. Diving into the core of today's global economic discussion, Giant critically evaluates the concept of world superpower, emphasizing an indispensable role of economic prowess and the freedom of nations' people as the cornerstone of true power. Through the lens of American history and policies, he contrasts the paths taken by the emerging economies and superpower aspirants, providing a thought provoking analysis of the BRICS nation and their global significance or lack of it, therefore. The conversation shifts to the pressing issues of infrastructural development, debt sustainability, and the socio-economic trajectories of developing nations. Giant articulates the challenges faced by the countries heavily investing in infrastructure without a clear blueprint for economic growth, pointing out the inefficiencies and corruption that often accompany such projects. As we touch upon the geopolitical tensions and collaborations within the South Asian region, Giant expertise brings to light the complexities of India's relationship with its neighbors, particularly in this context, Afghanistan, and the broader implications for regional stability. Concluding on a note of optimism, Giant highlights the promising future of East Asia, praising China's remarkable progress and the potential of neighboring countries as a beacon of hope and progress in this garboiled world.
Hi,
Hi, Jeff.
Haji, Faizan ji, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm really good. Is it evening over there at the moment, I believe?
Yeah, it's night time.
That's good. So, are you working at the moment? You finished your work or
Yeah, I mean, listen, we invest globally, so I have to keep track of what's happening around the world.
yeah,
But most of the work is over by this time.
of course. I mean, it's the same for me because a lot of my work is related to creating avenues for our media platform, and at the same time, I'm working in a few different channels when it comes to education and investment building as well. So a lot of my colleagues and contacts are in USA or Europe. So the time
Right,
difference becomes either late night or early morning. And I prefer actually
right.
early morning because at this time, I'm sure, I mean, you're from India, so you you have faced the same situation that I'm facing at the moment because currently, for the past 1.5 year, I'm actually in Pakistan. So
Uh-huh.
this and the situation in Pakistan that I'm seeing now. I mean, I was born in Pakistan, but I've lived in Malaysia, and then I was in Uzbekistan for 1.5 year or so. So my experience has mostly been of Malaysia, Europe, and Uzbekistan. But staying in Pakistan, it's a whole new experience. It's a very different experience when you consider adulthood. When you're a kid, it's a very different thing because you don't see the world as it is. But coming back, it's very noisy, I would say.
Right.
So,
Well,
uh,
this is the nature of Indians, Pakistanis, and Bangladeshi. They like Nepalis. They like to
yeah,
create a lot of noise,
yeah,
and they also like to create a lot of smell as well. So everything is smelly.
yeah,
They like the chaos. I think
yeah,
it's even if you watch the movies of these countries, they are very chaotic. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of distractions. It's the way it's what people like in these countries.
I think you've used a perfect word, chaotic. That's the perfect word to define this whole region itself. And when I was watching your interview, actually, I think it was with Zephyr or something like that.
Zephyr, yeah,
Zephyr, yeah.
yeah.
I could really relate 100% of how I feel when I came to Pakistan, like
Well, the
word to
Faizan,
word.
I the issue is that when I talk with the thing with Pakistanis and Indians is that a Pakistani wants to think that India is worse, and Indians want to think that Pakistan is worse. They forget that they are the same people.
Definitely.
Okay, there's a very, very small difference of last 50 to 70 years of religion, but most of it are pretty much the same people. They have the same mentality, but then they like to look better than each other, and they are not.
Yeah. Even when you consider religion, I believe that a lot of it is so much similar because we've lived together so much throughout our history. If you see, Pakistan and India used to be the same. A lot of people from India migrated to Pakistan. A lot of people from Pakistan migrated to India. And we have shared so much culture together that a lot of things that I believe that we are implementing, thinking that it is Islamic in our culture, but it is not Islamic. Those are actually Hindu customs, but we have evolved so much together that it feels that is the same thing.
Well, and it is the same with India as well. So a lot of food and a lot of wedding dresses are Muslim dresses. They come from Persia and Turkey,
Yeah.
and they have nothing to do with Hinduism. So but the whole thing is that people of this region are very narrow-minded,
Yeah.
and that is why they can't think in broader terms.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, did you happen to look at the questions that I sent to you?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I had a quick look, and I'm
Mhm.
fine with those questions. We can talk about them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great because
Is my
I was,
sound is my sound coming all right?
yeah, it's
Okay,
perfectly fine.
good.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
because for me, I was thinking that apart from looking at a very individualistic point of view, we look at a little bit more broader perspective, something which we are all thinking, but nobody uh, tends to talk about, because I feel like there's a big problem. A lot of people don't realize it, but we all are talking about that. Which country is the next superpower? Everybody is characterizing China, India, Russia. Everybody is pointing fingers at somebody, but we haven't really discussed what is the criteria. Like, how do you define a world power? What is a world power? And I feel like the biggest criteria should be economics and then other things, because without economics you cannot run a nation, you cannot be a superpower. So how would you say, as an economist yourself, how do you define a world superpower?
Well, very important about a country becoming a superpower is that it has no intentions of becoming superpower. What it does is it gives its people freedom to act and freedom to evolve. What America has given its people is liberties. Um, America is among the most open minded, among the most generous people on the planet. It is because of the individuals in America that America is a superpower. Uh, Now, Britain was superpower for the same reason. It was a small country, and Britain ruled one third or more of the world at one point of time, despite being just a small country, because it created a philosophical base in its society. There wasn't a tyrant trying to convert that country into a superpower. The moment you see a tyrant trying to convert a country into a superpower, it is not going to be a superpower because people in that country will lose faith, will lose ambitions, will lose motivation to do better. America is great because it allows its people to do as best as they can, And that is why America is superpower. And I think that is why America will continue to be the superpower in the foreseeable future.
So what about BRICS? I mean, a lot of people are raising question that BRICS is breaking American superpower legacy, or even the political geopolitical situation right now, especially concerning Ukraine war and now with the Israel and Palestine issue, is creating a lot of financial implications on US that it has to back off from being a superpower.
The thing is, backing off doesn't work because America is the only country there. As far as BRICS is concerned, it's a made-up acronym. It's a made-up acronym because someone at Goldman Sachs wanted to sell new products. I work in the capital markets, so I see people creating products to market to fund managers. So just because someone came up with BRICS does not mean that these countries should have come together. Now, so for me, BRICS is a non-entity. They are trying to create something out of nothing. There are only two countries in BRICS of significance, and those countries are China and Russia. And China and Russia managed to trade among themselves without an organization anyway. So they trade in yuan and they trade through their borders anyway. So the whole reason behind these other latch-ons, the other countries to become part of BRICS, makes no sense to me. They fight with each other. Look at any of the other countries in BRICS. They have no trust. They have not really much trade among themselves. And recently, Argentina decided not to even become a part of BRICS because it clearly doesn't make sense. And I'm all on the side of Argentina. Now, the only reason BRICS makes sense is because China does not want to become too visible as a powerful entity, and it wants to hide behind an acronym to get on with its business. China is a focused country. China, for the last 3 decades, has been very focused on economic development of its people. And Faizan, I go to China several times a year. China changes every quarter. Every quarter when I go to China, China is a different place. Because they are focused on economic development. They are not trying to become a superpower, and they're trying to do their business. And that's the only reason I think China is a part of BRICS, because it doesn't want to become too visible in world affairs.
So, do you think that that China will actually influence BRICS to be much more stronger than the Allied?
Again, the only thing really of significance in BRICS is China. And China has currency swap agreements with Middle Eastern countries now. They are doing trade in using yuan, and they are already doing trade using yuan in Russia. So China is pretty much getting what it was supposed to get, even without BRICS. I think China is probably just, getting along. It doesn't want to fight back or be a separate entity. But at the same time, there's too much of an anti-China sentiment in the Western society. Anti-China sentiment created by its media and its politicians. And China probably doesn't want to become too visible. So if it can become a part of a bigger group that it can dominate behind the curtain, I think that's what it will happily do.
I always believe that there can never be two superpowers at the same time. There always has to be one entity or one nation, one country, or whatever you call it, who is going to be leading. When it comes to BRICS or when it comes to the US bloc with NATO, we have seen the same thing. In NATO, US has always been the pusher. When it comes to BRICS, there are certain, you can say, countries which are trying to lead in their own way, but nobody has actually taken the throne yet. Nobody has actually said that, okay, we are the one who are going to be leading. We are going to be the decision makers. At the moment, you see that Russia is doing their own thing. They have their own policies going on. You see China, they have their own policies going on. And you can say, to some extent, even India is playing its own role as well. And you can see in the media, all these three countries are playing a big role in economics. Maybe not in the whole economic scenario, but in their own way. China is exporting not just manpower, but at the same time technology all over the place. In terms of India, they are one of the biggest exporters of manpower in a lot of nations, especially in developing nations. And then when it comes to Russia, it's a very different ballgame as well. So moving forward, definitely somebody has to take a lead. And do you think, like how you are mentioning that China is, I mean, this whole organization is it safe to say that China created BRICS
No, Goldman Sachs created BRICS.
for China?
Goldman Sachs, no, not for China. They just wanted to sell a product, so they created this strange acronym BRICS. And Faizan, another thing is that this whole concept of emerging markets is an oxymoron, because these emerging markets are not emerging markets. South Africa is going down the drain. It is collapsing. India is collapsing. China and Russia are the only entities in BRICS that makes sense to me. And Vietnam is not a part of BRICS, which is actually improving quite rapidly. Cambodia is probably going to do well as well in the future, and it is not a part of BRICS. But the
What about
problem
Saudi Arabia?
Well, Saudi Arabia is still not a part of BRICS, but again, I think the issue is that Saudi Arabia and China already have currency swap agreements, so they don't really need another entity to trade through. They are already trading through yuan, another thing is that Saudi Arabian currency is pegged to American dollar. So in a way, when they trade through their local currencies, they are actually either trading through yuan or in US dollar.
Yeah. So maybe it's just an idea. Maybe you can reflect on it a little bit further. Maybe this alliance can actually help build better relations within this subcontinent in Central Asian area.
No, it won't, because the problem with the subcontinent is that these people like to fight. These people are driven by hate, and these people want to blame others for their problems. These countries, the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent, has been a failure since the departure of the British, and they are always looking forward to blame someone else. Their leadership wants to do the same thing. Their militaries want to do the same thing. They're always blaming the other guy instead of accepting responsibility. And Faizan, that is why these people are wretched and weak. And Americans are a superpower, not because they want it to be superpower, but because they accept self-responsibility. When things go wrong in America, Americans accept that it was their mistake. I have been, Faizan, to close to 100 countries. I have never met more open-minded, more compassionate people than Americans. And they are creative as people as well as a result. And they are welcoming. They welcome all kinds of people to come into their countries. And they accept others as their own countries. And that is what makes America a superpower. And that because those ingredients aren't there in the subcontinent, those countries are not going to become superpower. And the problem is that the whole interest to become superpower works against you, because it is when you give freedom to your people, when you create a liberty-oriented society, that is when the nation becomes powerful, not by creating a tyranny so that you can become a superpower. Again, one country that I think is doing a lot of good things is China. China, I talk with Chinese. Chinese feel reasonably free and good about their country. Chinese women go out at 2 o'clock in the night and they don't worry about their safety. In Shenzhen, these days, if you go out to the food courts, women leave their purses on the food court tables and go away to buy food from the food stalls, which shows that the same Shenzhen, which had crime problems 15 years back when I visited it the first time, has become extremely safe. So China is doing a lot of things, but again, remember, China is still a second world country. It does not have the philosophical and moral base that America has had for the last 200, 300 years.
In your last interview, you have actually mentioned that in India, Modi is trying to create a one vision scenario to align the whole population to back him. Can't
That's
it be
not
done? Something
I,
along
I,
those lines, right?
I don't think I said that. Just to clarify that thing, he is trying to bring people together, but at the same time by creating hatred towards the minorities. And by creating hatred towards the minorities, the problem is that Muslim nationalism will increase, the Sikh nationalism will increase, because those people will say that, hey, if Hindus can decide to have Hindutva, why can't we decide to have our own nationalism? Northeastern people will create their own nationalism. And already at least I have recently seen from what has been happening in the southern part of India, people in Karnataka have been going against people from North India who speak Hindi in Karnataka. So now all kinds of regional tensions will come up. Now, these are Hindus fighting with each other, the North Indians living in Karnataka fighting with each other because of the language issue. Once you make people tribal, tribalism will reflect in many ways. By forcing people into a one vision, you will create a very dismembered country. And that is where India is going towards right now.
So how do you see the economic climate changing in this whole region per se?
Well, I see it very clearly what is happening in the whole region. The only two countries that make some sense to me, which in my view will improve over the next few years, are Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. But if you look at Myanmar has fallen apart already. It is not a part of international news right now because international media and most medias focus on people only when there is one strong side and one weak side, because then it's so easy to blame the strong side for everything. Myanmar has fallen apart. I meet a lot of Burmese and they can't really go back anymore to Burma. That's how bad the situation in Burma is. India is falling apart and Pakistan is chaotic.
Yeah.
The future of these countries is worse in the future than it is now. And it will continue to get worse. And the problem, Faizan, is that these people destroyed their institutions. They should never have let the British leave the Indian subcontinent. The British created the institutions of the Indian subcontinent, and they are the only people capable of running those institutions. So unfortunately, the problem with the Indian subcontinent is that it will continue to fall apart. Now, I'm fully aware of the fact, Faizan, that the world is very obsessed and very romantic about the future of India right now. I go to India quite often, and I tell you, India is worsening by the day, except that the media is just portraying the exact opposite of what is happening in India. There are many reasons why it's doing it. Because I think primarily because it wants to create a challenger, a so-called challenger to China. But manufacturing is not going to go to India, and I can guarantee you that. And I know people will say, hey, Apple is now manufacturing a lot of its mobile phones in India. Hey, no, Apple is not manufacturing most of its mobile phones in India. It is assembling those mobile phones. Everything is coming from China, and Indian operation is assembling those. To those people who don't understand the difference between manufacturing and assembling, assembling is about tightening, putting things together. It is not about making things that go into the mobile phones. So, in very short, the future of the Indian subcontinent is very bad, including of Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, because once the regime in Bangladesh changes, Bangladesh will start going downhill as well. Because the problem with the Indian subcontinent people is that these were supposed to be British institutions, and British aren't there to run those institutions. And all the checks and balances are gone, and all the moral values that provided nutrition to those institutions are now far long gone. So these countries will fall apart.
Another thing that I see in this whole developing region, I would say, or trying to developing region, I would say, is the depth problem in economics. A lot of these countries, they're trying to take debts from different institutes to fund the development programs, but at the same time, the frequency, the speed of development and the projects that I see which are being implemented are probably not at the scale at which that they are proposed for. So do you really think that it is going to be sustainable in long term, or how do you see the depth balance coming
Okay,
in?
so let's talk about the usage of the word developing. These are not developing countries. These are third world countries, and they are becoming fourth world countries as time goes by. That is true with the Indian subcontinent. That is true with Africa. That is true with most of Latin America. These countries are not developing countries. They are undeveloping countries. They are reverting back to their pre-colonial past. They are going to get worse with time, socially and eventually economically as well. So firstly, they are not developing countries. The second issue is that a lot of these countries think that putting in infrastructure the way China did is going to somehow propel them into a growth path. So what they are doing, and I can talk about, at least, a lot of African countries built train lines and highways, and they were unable to pay debts. Sri Lanka did exactly the same thing. They were unable to pay their debts. Pakistan did the same thing, and they had problems with the ports, payment of the payments related with the ports. India is now doing exactly the same thing. India is loading itself with debt to build infrastructure, thinking that building infrastructure will automatically lead to higher growth rate. This is what is called what I would call cargo cult mentality. People should, it's a proper English term. A lot of people don't understand what it means. It basically means that you put the cart before the horse. You think that by building the infrastructure, manufacturing and growth and economic growth will trigger in their societies. But that's not what's going to happen, because infrastructure should be built based on the requirement of the place, and not hoping that manufacturing will come once you put in infrastructure. So infrastructure is becoming a huge liability for these third world countries. So let's take an example of India, Faizan, and also because I'm more familiar with India. A lot of Indian bridges have just fallen apart. They just fell into the river. A long tunnel they were manufacturing just collapsed, and they had not prepared escape routes for that tunnel. They were dumping waste rock just outside the tunnel. So they can't really manufacture infrastructure anyway. And I'm told that as much as 50% of the revenue that is created by infrastructure development goes into bribes to politicians and bureaucrats. And roads get washed away after a single rain. So really, you are not creating something for the future, because none of these things will stay on into the future. They get washed away very quickly. They are going to become a massive liability actually into the future, because you will not only have created tunnels that are collapsing, bridges that are collapsing, bridges that can't be maintained, and also you will have loaded yourself with huge amount of debt. A lot of growth of India, the you know empirical growth rate of India, can be attributed to infrastructural development. And again, as I say, which is actually a liability, not something that is going into growth rate. So you will see a reflection of that appearing over the next few years. Again, I'm fully aware of the fact that the international media and the international organizations think that India is building a lot of infrastructure and that will lead to higher growth rate. That is actually completely wrong, because infrastructure is creating a massive chaos already. And this is another problem. Even in the short term, it does not benefit the people. Even a small bridge takes years before it gets completed in India. And while they work on the bridge, there's no safety precautions taken to build that bridge. So several people die on that bridge. Every single bridge in India consumes several human lives. And it creates a massive amount of chaos. So it does not help in the short term. In the medium term, they get washed away anyway. And they were uneconomic anyway in the first place, because they weren't going to contribute in the economy, even if they were constructed the proper way. So whatever way I look at it, this is a huge liability, this is a waste, and this will start reflecting over the next few years.
Last question. I'm not sure how much you have exposure about Afghanistan and India's relationship, but lately I have heard that India has been building, I mean, sorry, Afghanistan has been building relations with India, and there's been a lot of geopolitical concerns a lot of neighboring countries have shown, including Pakistan and Tajikistan as well. Are you familiar with those allegations, I
I
would say?
No, I don't know much about what you just said.
Oh, okay. Uh, are you familiar with the proposed dam in Afghanistan?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. All right, no worries. I mean, I was just curious because it has been a big news lately because there's been an I think a terrorist attack in Tajikistan, which they are linking to Afghanistan as well, and then there's been I mean, there's been a proposed dam by Afghanistan, which Pakistan has shown concern, and I think there's been an ongoing concern between Pakistan and India already with the five rivers, right? And now with Afghanistan building a dam on Kabul, I think it's in Kabul, or I think about 40 kilometers away from Pakistan's territory, from Balochistan. So that has been alleged that it is a provocation from Indian side. Like how you mentioned that they're always trying to
Well,
find.
yeah, and this is why you never know what is happening in the back rooms. They are the bureaucrats and politicians of these countries are very petty people. They are small-minded scammers. Uh, I usually call them, junkies. These are brain dead junkies. And I'm talking about not just India, I'm talking about the whole Indian subcontinent. This is the kind of people that these citizens of these societies create as their leaders. And that leads to a lot of backroom scheming against each other, hatred against each other, blaming each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if they are trying these things. Uh, you know, uh, it looks very clear that India tried to killed one person in Canada, and India tried to kill one person in United States. Yeah. Now, I actually uh, uh, completely agree that Canada and the US should not give their countries as platforms for terrorist activities in other countries. But at the same time, India gets does these kind of things. They all do these kind of things, and the another big problem is that they do it so unprofessionally that they could not even execute a small murder properly. It came out to they could not hide it because the Indian bureaucrats were talking openly about it. So the problem is that none of these things, they can't do anything properly. At least, when Israel does these things, it goes out and does it. Mm-hmm. India, despite being a big country, could not kill one person and hide that murder.
I think a good word for that would be we use in our language. I'm sure that you are aware of it. Donkey ki chot pe, right?
Well, and clearly it makes an influence on Modi's image because the citizens think that this is a show of being a superpower, that we can go to Canada and the US and kill people. So citizens are more likely to vote for Modi because of that thing. But the problem is that you are creating a lawless atmosphere because of this, and you are going to create leadership which is going to be extremely tyrannical in the future, and that is where unfortunately India is headed over the next few years.
Thank you so much, Jayant. If you could end on one positive note, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? How would you end it?
Well, I mean, as I said, I'm very positive about China. China is doing a lot of things. It is still a second world country. There's a lot of good future ahead of China. China consumes half of virtually everything we produce today. Your microphone, a lot of things around you have been made in China. China is a great country. That country continues to improve. I don't know how, they will have political and social issues at some point of time. Every country faces it when it grows so fast, so quickly. But I'm very, very positive about whole of East Asia. That means Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, and China. These are good countries, and these are the future of humanity.
Thank you so much, Jayant. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Faizan.